answer.
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady has reclaimed her time.
I'm not going to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to...
What you just saw is only the beginning. Because beneath that moment is a collision that most people never fully registered. There's something unspoken in the way she reacts, something she avoids, and something the room feels shift. Stay with me, because what's underneath this exchange doesn't end where you think it ends.
Yields back. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi, right here. We are joined in this room by some of the thousands of survivors from Jeffrey Epstein's horrific sex trafficking ring. They have shown such incredible courage in speaking out, in demanding accountability to bring the predators and pedophiles to justice. The Epstein Files Transparency Act required your Department of Justice to disclose the perpetrators connected with Epstein's criminal activities and to redact the information of survivors to protect their identities. Let me show you what actually happened. First, in violation of the law, your department has shown a pattern of redacting the names of powerful predators. Here behind me is one example of an email from Epstein to a man whose name was redacted. The email reads, quote, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." Only after members of Congress demanded that we see the unredacted files did the world learn the name of this individual, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the chairman and CEO of a company that had financial ties to President Trump's business and personal ties to Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon. Second, the survivors were not similarly protected, also in violation of the law. Here is another email titled Epstein Victim List. We have blurred the names of the survivors for their protection, but your Department of Justice initially released this list of 32 survivors' names with only one name redacted, along with numerous files that disclose not only the names, the emails, and the addresses of survivors, but also nude photographs and even the identities of Jane Does who had been protected for decades until your department released their names. Survivors are now telling us that their families are finding out for the first time that they were trafficked by Epstein. In their words, quote, "This release does not provide closure. It feels like a deliberate attempt to intimidate survivors, punish those who came forward, and reinforce the same culture of secrecy that allowed Epstein's crimes to continue for decades." To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand. Attorney General Bondi, you apologized to the survivors in your opening statement for what they went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Will you turn to them now and apologize for what your Department of Justice has put them through with the absolutely unacceptable release of the Epstein files and their information?
Congresswoman, you sat before, Merrick Garland sat in this chair twice.
Attorney General Bondi,
No, can I finish my answer?
No, I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors? This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the
my
answer.
time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't
a
she ask
question.
Merrick Garland this?
I am
Twice
reclaiming
when he
my
sat in
time, and
chair.
when I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the
my
gentlelady's
I'm
reclaimed
I'm
her
not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Thank you. You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say
I'll
this.
direct it to
What a
you.
massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a
Mr.
question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is
I'm not going to get
interrupting.
in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing
and
theatrics.
let me have my
The
time.
gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds. You can proceed with your final
Thank you.
17 seconds.
What a massive cover-up this has been and continues to be. Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only
Regular
to
order.
then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level
Chairman,
apologize
The chair now
to them
recognizes the chair.
on what you have done.
Time of the gentlelady
yield
expired.
back.
The gentlelady, you have no time to yield back.
Theatrics.
We appreciate that. We appreciate the thought. And I would argue the central issue in the last election, the presidential election, was securing the border.
What we just watched is a hearing shaped by one central collision, a member of Congress demanding direct accountability on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein's survivors, and an attorney general who repeatedly refuses to answer the question placed directly in front of her. The record shows that every escalation, every interruption, and every attempt to redirect the exchange revolved around that refusal. Let's start with what actually happened in this room. Representative Jayapal opened her questioning by grounding the discussion not in abstractions, but in the presence of survivors seated behind Attorney General Bondi. That framing wasn't incidental. It created a factual baseline. These were individuals whose identities, according to the transcript, were disclosed by the Department of Justice in violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Their names, emails, addresses, and even nude photographs were released. And when Jayapal asked how many survivors had been unable to meet with the DOJ, every single survivor raised their hand. That context is crucial because it sets the foundation for the central question Jayapal then posed. Would Attorney General Bondi turn around and apologize to the survivors, not for Epstein's crimes, but for the actions taken by her own department in releasing their protected information? That question was direct, documented, and unavoidable. What followed was not an answer. Instead, Bondi invoked her predecessor. She referenced previous hearings. She attempted to shift the focus away from the actions of the current DOJ and onto Merrick Garland, and Jayapal immediately reclaimed her time, because the question had not been addressed. This is not a matter of interpretation. The exchange is on the record. The Attorney General never turned to face the survivors and never issued the apology requested. The tension in the room intensified as a Republican member interrupted, asserting that the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. Yet even in that intervention, no effort was made to supply the missing answer itself. What was being protected was not an explanation, but the absence of one. When the chairman finally reinforced that the time belongs to the gentle lady, Jayapal used her remaining seconds to outline a series of facts already introduced earlier in the hearing. That Trump elevated the political value of the Epstein files release, that Bondi entered office claiming to possess a client list, only to later state no such list existed, and that her deputy allegedly met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell in a minimum security facility. Across each assertion, Bondi remained silent. This silence becomes more significant when connected to the earlier portions of Jayapal's presentation. She displayed evidence that the DOJ had initially redacted the name of Sultan Ahmed bin Sulam, a figure with financial ties to Donald Trump's business ventures and personal ties to Steve Bannon, despite the law requiring disclosure of perpetrators. Only after congressional intervention did that name become public. The discrepancy between the treatment of powerful individuals and the exposure of survivors is documented verbatim in the hearing. So what does this actually mean? First, the contradiction is straightforward. The Department of Justice redacted the names of alleged perpetrators while releasing the names, contact information, and even nude photographs of survivors, the exact opposite of what the Epstein Files Transparency Act required. That is not speculation. It is described explicitly in the transcript, with examples shown during the hearing. Second, the refusal to apologize is not a procedural detail. In a hearing centered on accountability for misconduct that harmed survivors, the Attorney General's unwillingness to face those affected carries legal and political implications. The question Jayapal posed was not rhetorical. It was a measure of responsibility. And the record shows that responsibility was not acknowledged. Third, Bondi's attempt to redirect the exchange toward past attorneys general is significant for what it avoids. The issue at hand was not historical precedent nor the conduct of a predecessor. It was the present-day decision-making of her own department and the consequences those decisions had on the people standing behind her. When you strip away the deflection, what remains is a documented refusal to speak to the harm done under her watch. What was not said in this room matters just as much as what was. Bondi did not deny that the survivor's information was released. She did not dispute the extent of the exposure. She did not argue that the law had been correctly followed. She did not offer a justification for the redaction of alleged perpetrators' names. And she did not present any plan for correcting the violations identified by Jayapal. Each omission functions as its own form of evidence. This is not a matter of interpretation, it is a matter of record. No clarification was offered. None was attempted. The interruptions from members defending Bondi did not supply answers either. Their interventions were procedural, not substantive. They objected to tone, timing, and process, but never addressed the facts Jayapal presented. That asymmetry reinforces the core dynamic of the hearing, one side pressing for accountability, and the other side resisting the premise of the question itself. To understand the bigger picture, we have to examine the political context surrounding the Epstein files. Jayapal's closing line before her time expired stated that Donald Trump made the release of the files a centerpiece of his political campaign, because he believed it would benefit him. That statement is grounded in a well-documented pattern. Trump repeatedly promoted the idea of exposing the Epstein network while simultaneously maintaining relationships with individuals who appear in or around the released materials. Whether those relationships are politically relevant is not the issue here. The issue is that Bondi's DOJ redacted the name of a figure with documented ties to Trump and Bannon while revealing the identities of survivors. That contrast is indisputable on the face of the transcript. Bondi's refusal to acknowledge responsibility occurs against this backdrop, and the silence becomes louder in that context. When a Justice Department shields powerful connections while exposing vulnerable victims, the question is no longer about bureaucratic error. It becomes a structural issue, one tied directly to power, influence, and selective transparency. The hearing also reveals something broader about the recurring tension between Congress and executive agencies. The attempt by Bondi to reference past attorneys general mirrors a common tactic used by officials facing scrutiny, shifting discussions away from present failures by invoking historical continuity. But this strategy falters when the harm in question occurred under the official currently testifying. In this case, the survivors in the room were responding to actions taken during Bondi's tenure, not Garland's and not anyone else's. What emerges is a pattern not subtle in its construction. A law mandated disclosure of perpetrators. The DOJ redacted perpetrators and exposed survivors. Congress demanded unredacted files. Only then were certain names corrected. Bondi was asked to apologize directly to the people harmed by that failure. She declined to do so, repeatedly. And as the moment escalated, supporters intervened not to clarify facts, but to shield her from answering. The implications of this pattern extend beyond the specific individuals involved. When an attorney general declines to take responsibility in a public hearing, it sends a message about how the department interprets accountability. When victims are exposed while perpetrators are protected, it signals a distortion in priorities. And when questions go unanswered, it documents an institutional posture that relies on avoidance rather than explanation. The final verdict, based solely on the transcript we witnessed, is clear. Jayapal established a factual record, survivors' identities were released, perpetrators' names were withheld, and the DOJ's actions violated the requirements of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Bondi did not contest those facts. She did not provide an explanation for the violations. She did not commit to corrective action, and critically, she never delivered the apology that was the central question of the exchange. In hearings of this kind, accountability is often measured not by the volume of testimony, but by the presence or absence of direct answers. Here, the absence is striking. The reluctance to acknowledge harm done to survivors, while powerful figures remain shielded through redaction, reinforces a hierarchy that benefits those with access and leaves victims exposed. This hearing does not resolve the broader questions surrounding the Epstein files. It does not settle the political implications. It does not answer the survivors' demands for accountability. But it does reveal, in the plain language of the transcript, a refusal to confront responsibility, and an insistence by elected officials to extract that accountability on the record. What remains now is not speculation. It is documentation. And documentation, once public, does not disappear. If you want more breakdowns like this where powerful people get pressed on the record, hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. Who do you think came out stronger in this hearing? And what was the one moment that changed the whole exchange?